Hi, my name is Mahogany Allen. I'm a junior here at East Bay. When I first decided on doing the video, I originally was going to interview a family member, but I asked my mom if she knew anyone else who fit the criteria, and she found the perfect person. Her name is Naomi Fisher. When I was interviewing Naomi, she actually had a friend with her, and I'm so grateful she did because they both have great stories and experiences that relate to the class theme of immigration. Naomi is 80 years old and she's from North Carolina, and she moved to California when she was in her 20s. Patricia, her friend, is 71 years old and she's from the Bronx, New York. However, her family is from Port-au-Prince, Trinidad, so she does have some experience and stories about Trinidad. However, she did move to California when she was 19. Um, they both have really great stories, and I think this is going to be great for the project. My video is a hybrid video, so I will have some video footage of them actually being interviewed and then also some history and background information.
Excuse me, I'm Naomi Fisher. I'm 80 years old and I'm black. What else was that?
Where are you from?
Oh, I'm from North Carolina.
Hi, I'm Patricia Smith, and I'm black. I'm 71 years old, and I'm from the Bronx, New York.
Okay, my mom is from Georgia, Atlanta, and my dad was from Pittsburgh, Georgia.
Okay, and then what about your parents?
My parents were from Port of Spain, Trinidad, in the West Indies. And they came here around 1920, in the 1920s.
Yeah. Okay. When were you ever in the West Indies at all?
Just to visit my family. I still have a lot of family there.
Oh, okay.
So they're kind of spread out in Trinidad. But my parents came here and first settled in Harlem.
Okay.
At that time, people had to be sponsored by someone, and my maternal grandmother was here first, and then she sponsored my mom and her son and my great uncle, and then my aunt was here on my dad's side, and she sponsored him to come.
What does it mean to be like sponsored?
You have to have money that you put on deposit with the government agency to guarantee that that person would have support, because there wasn't welfare.
Located on the northeastern coast of Venezuela, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago comprises the most two southerly islands in the West Indies. However, today I'll focus on Trinidad, which has a landmass of 1,865 square miles and is about the size of Delaware. The capital of Trinidad is an island country in the Caribbean Sea. It's called Port of Spain. It is the country's main port. The country lies on the western coast of the island of Trinidad. Port of Spain is an important commercial center, producing beer, rum, plastic, lumber, and textiles. Chief exports of Trinidad and Tobago include oil, sugar, citrus fruit, asphalt, and coffee. Trinidad and Tobago has approximately 1.27 million residents, most living in Trinidad. The country supports several ethnic groups, including Asian Indians, Blacks, Europeans, Chinese, and Lebanese, and many individuals of mixed heritage. The dominant religious groups of the island include Roman Catholics, Hindus, Protestant Christians, Anglicans, and Muslims. Trinidadian immigrants generally select one of two options. They either make a quick livelihood in the United States before returning home, or they join American society permanently, usually immersing themselves into Black culture and working for the betterment of African American and Caribbean American communities. Many of the early Trinidadians aged 35 and did not return to their native land. Later immigrants often chose the second option and increasingly became a part of the distinctly Caribbean community in New York City and Florida, very similar to the Jewish immigrants where they would become sojourners or settlers, and many times sojourners did not make the return trip home. Since the turn of the 20th century, there have been many waves of Caribbean immigrants into the United States. The first wave was modest and lasted from 1900 to 1920. Between 1899 and 1924, the number of documented English-speaking Caribbean immigrants entering the United States increased annually from 1899 to 1924. Immigration fell substantially after 1924 when the U.S. government established national quotas on African and Caribbean countries. By 1930, there were only 177,981,000 documented foreign blacks in the United States, less than 2% of the aggregate black community. Approximately 72,200 of the foreign blacks were first generation immigrants from the English speaking Caribbean. Okay, so when your family moved here from Trinidad, how was it for you?
Well, I wasn't born yet. I was born here in the United States, but my oldest brother was, he was in Trinidad. And then when he wanted to come, he came and joined the Army, and he fought in World War II.
Okay. When you were visiting Trinidad, how was it as a child, like comparing it to the United States to Trinidad?
Oh, oh my goodness, totally different. I stood out like the sore thumb because I was very outspoken, and women there are not generally accepted that way. I was told what to do, and that's not something that, I was accustomed to listening to someone like who wasn't my father telling me what to do. And it was just totally different culture, very different way of living. People were, and when I went down there to visit, the first time was during Carnival, and so that's a very raucous time. It's like the Carnival here that they have in New Orleans.
Okay.
And so the whole economy there was based on what was happening for Carnival, so everything was focused on that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Also, when you would go there, was there a language barrier at all, or?
Well, because my parents still had very heavy accents, I could understand what people were saying. They spoke with it was English, but it was with very heavy accents, and sentences were kind of inverted. So it's like they would say morning or evening rather than good morning or good evening, and it would be at a time of day that it didn't fit, okay? And I was familiar with most of the foods that they cooked, which were very different than what, you would eat here in America. But I was accustomed to it because my grandparents and my parents, that's the food they fixed, and we could find it here. So,
right.
That's pretty much what we found.
But
the things that you were accustomed to having were generally imported. It's like soap and paper goods and things like that. They didn't have a way of manufacturing those things, so they were all imported and very high cost. And a friend of mine who went with me on my second trip, she said, "This is really funny because here you can have a weekend vacation on the beach. You can buy a month's worth of food or buy a T-shirt for $50. Each one would be $50."
Wow. Another question that I had was, when you moved to the United States, well, I mean, you were born in the United States, but growing up in like Harlem, I remember you saying that everyone was kind of like segregated or like sectioned off. So like the Italians had their own section, were in their own like area, and then the blacks, and then the Jewish. How was that?
Right.
Like, give me like a visual of like how that was for you, or like illustrate.
Well, Harlem mainly was where the black people lived.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you just had, and everybody lived together. I mean, it didn't matter what your financial status was. You really couldn't move out of there. When the family moved to the Bronx, then you had more mixtures within apartment buildings. But again, people pretty much stuck with their traditions and, how they raised their kids and things like that. But one thing that was different for me was that I had like Jewish neighbors, and because New York was a bit kind of, it was very diverse, but people really were one. You learned other people's way of doing things, because like in New York on Friday, because of the number of Catholics that were there, everybody ate fish, whether you were Catholic or not. And during the Jewish holidays, there were, the celebrations and things that happened. You knew what was going on.
Right.
And the schools would have closed for the Jewish holidays, or you got out early to go to religious instruction, that kind of thing. And so things melded together. While people were in their separate clumps, you were still included. You weren't excluded from that.
Wow. Another question that I have is, were you around or like involved in the Harlem Renaissance at all?
No, that would have been my older brother and sister. It was happening, but because I was young, I was not, I wasn't involved in that.
Okay. And then another question. I know I already asked you this question, but I'm going to ask again. If there's any advice that you would give to Black youth or just youth in general now, what would it be?
Well, first of all, to be aware of whose shoulders you're standing on. What happened in order to bring us to where we are right now. And secondly, I think, as I said before, that to strive not necessarily to just have a good job or to work for a firm or that, but to really look to owning it, to possessing the reins rather than just being one of many, and to not fear being the only Black person in an all-white environment, but to really grab that and go with it, because things are not going to change if we shy away or back into, well, I just want to be in, around Black folks.
Right.
Okay,
well, is there anything else you would like to leave? Any lasting comments you'd like to say or anything like that?
No, I just appreciate you're doing what you're doing, and I hope that this will help you along the way of exploring what life was like so that we don't repeat mistakes, but we keep moving forward.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome, sweetheart.
I just grew up doing the best that I could. I was treated nicely and right, but there wasn't a lot of pleasure in my life. And I guess now it doesn't even matter, the way I was treated. But we weren't treated bad. It was 8 of us. I had girls and 3 boys. And all of us got an education. So everything went well. I enjoyed my parents. And they were nice, both my mother and father.
What would you do for fun as a kid?
Well, we didn't have refrigerators. We had ice boxes, okay? And the iceman used to come and deliver ice. And when this big block of ice.
5 pounds, 10 pounds.
And so when he would break up the ice, then and he'd leave, we'd go and get the ice. They would chase us away. But that was a lot of fun. And in elementary school, there was a sugar cone that you put the ice cream in. That factory was across the street from our schoolyard, and so we'd go back for lunch early and because he had to go home to eat, and we would go, and they had one door that opened all the time, and it's where the broken cones would come off, and they'd come down in a box, and we'd go grab. We were not good kids, but our parents are very, very strict, so you didn't go against your parents. You just figured out how to do stuff in between.
Okay. Next question. How was it for you in college?
Oh, in college, very nice, very nice. Every night at 10 o'clock, I was in the second building, for the first grade. I'm in the first. And we would sing. We couldn't sing, but we would sing, and we do dancing. We did dancing, and they said, "Naomi, why aren't you dancing?" I said, "My papa don't allow me." So that left me alone, And my mother wanted us to deal with people that were, a little classy, not bums. So we did that, and everything worked out nicely for us.
Was your school, was that a historically black college? Your college?
My college? Yes, it was all black.
Okay.
And we would have, Indians and different nationalities exchanging every 6 months.
We had like exchange students when you were. Oh wow.
Yeah, and it was interesting. And so this one girl, she always wanted to go to town with someone. She said, "I ring the bell door, and somebody please come and take me with you. Please come and take me with you." But they would be there, and they had fun. They were nice. So I liked my school. I don't know whether you've heard of Bennett.
Yeah, I have.
But it was a nice school, very nice. The boys would me and T would come over there on Sunday night, and I always have my little room behind a curtain. And then why you always sit there like that? I said, if I get a chance to kiss, I will. Well, there was some racial, but not as much as people think there is. And I know in the 4th grade, there was this little girl, little white girl. She and this little black girl went to lunch and everything together. And then when she became 6th grader, she says, "I can't play with her anymore." And I asked her, "Why can't you play?" "Because she was black." And so, "What are you?" She says, "I'm white and I can't play with black." I said, "Well, the way you look, I'm sure her mother would want you to play with her, but she's just taking up time with you. So you don't have to be with her. There are plenty of whites and blacks that she can, socialize with. So don't worry about it." And I told the principal, it got rid of her. So we don't want prejudice like that bold. So they put her in another school, and she could never come back to the school where she was. But coming up was pretty nice. You obeyed the people. You didn't go out, "I'll kill this person, I can't do this, and I can't, I'm not going to drink that water." But I was just being facetious, I guess. I'm not going to drink that black water. So, but it was nice. I had a lot of experience with it, a lot of it.
What about you? Was there any racism or anything like that for you growing up?
Well, it was not overt because we were never outside of our own little area. And we had Jewish neighbors on one side, we had Italian neighbors, we had Puerto Rican neighbors. Everybody we went to school together during the time when Castro took over in South America. We had, in Cuba, we had people who were struggling with that, and I think that was the first time that I really ever paid much attention to the fact that somebody was being, oppressed that way. But the only time that we really had any racial block for myself was when I came to California at 19, and somebody was bold enough to ask me what I was, because when I'm talking on the telephone, you can't tell what I am. And so he asked me point blank, you know, what are you? And I said, what do you mean? You know, I'm a woman. And he said, no, what race are you? And I told him I was black. Did that make a difference to him? And he said, yes. And it was like, okay. That was, you know, that was my first real experience with somebody rejecting me.
I always said I want to be a teacher. And so after I finished college, I became a teacher many years. And my life was a good life, you know, because I was in school 4 years. I guess 4 years, yeah. And I enjoyed everything. I enjoyed.
Back to your first job.
My first job, okay, after because it was the one at the Diamond Center was short, and because I had gotten married and I was pregnant at the time, so the next job was as a gift wrapper for Christmas at Bloomingdale's, and that was my favorite job, because that's all from the time I learned gift wrapping at Bullock's. I mean at Bloomingdale's. That's been my hobby, is gift wrapping. So that's my favorite one.
Okay.